Hi everyone, D-Keys here, showing you a non-guild Gorseval kill so that you guys can get an idea of how I would manage orbs as the only LE in the party. For this fight, I'm using a Fire, Air, Tempest build. Now note, when you're doing CC phases, I typically focus on DPS instead of CC because Staff LE doesn't have a lot of CC. I try to keep my DPS up as much as possible, but also have my finger on my heal skill, just in case I start getting wrecked by retail, in case my druid isn't quite paying attention to me, or can't quite get to me because other people are also wrecking themselves with retail. In general, I try to place my AoEs predictively, so that Gorseval will be walking into them and not out of them, and I make good use of my Glyph of Elementals in Fire Attunement just because I expected to have a decent amount of alacrity uptime. Using it in Air Attunement is also very reasonable as its base DPS is higher, but fire scales so much better with alacrity. So, during the first 33% of this fight, it's just simply DPS. Just burn him down as quickly as possible and avoid his smash attack that will CC you and interrupt, say, a meteor shower. You can either stand a little bit further away to avoid it, or you can just be prepared to dodge and time your overload to either use its stability or just not meteor shower during that time. Alternatively, while I used Unstable Conduit in the Tempest line for a little bit more healing, you can use Gal Song instead for your traits just to have one CC break when you might need it a little bit. So during the first split phase at 33%, this particular group chose to run as a Zerg to all four, though some other groups will split into two groups, and each group will take out two of these elites. Now if these elites reach Gorseval, then your group will wipe. After this first split, these black orbs will start spawning. As a staff LE, it's typically your job to help break down those orbs. What I found most effective is to stay with the group to keep your might and fury high, and just use your lava fonts on those orbs. Since they tick for about 6,000 to 7,000 damage each tick, you'll easily take out an orb with just one lava font as long as you keep your might and fury high. This is very useful, which means you can use your auto attacks, your meteor shower, and your overloads and other skills on Gorseval, since Gorseval is a very tough DPS check. Now, every so often, Gorseval will do an AoE nuke, which is why we are bringing him to the wall, and then we glide when that nuke's about to happen so that we avoid that damage. Whenever I don't have AoEs down, I try to stealth back in so that I don't pull aggro. Since Gorseval has some pretty wonky aggro mechanics, I try to do whatever I can to minimize that. Again, during CC phases, try to maintain good DPS using Meteor Shower and other AoEs that work very well on Gorseval's hitbox, though I will still use lava fonts on the orbs during the second and later phases because if I fall behind, it's very hard to catch up. Also, if needed, I will use Gust and Static Field in Air Attunement to help break that break bar. I find that the cast time for Frostbow is a little bit too long for the CC that it imposes, so I usually don't recommend that. During the second split phase, I'm usually all over the place trying to clean up orbs that I haven't been able to get to. And while I try to take out the orbs that are the largest threats first, I try to catch up with my failing Strength Warrior as quickly as possible so that I just have to use one lava font and then can move on. Once I catch up with the group and orbs are under control, I continue DPSing whatever the group is focusing on. During the third and final phase of Gorseval, he will produce AoE prisons at everyone's feet after his first pound attack. You cannot evade those, so you need to use positioning so that you're not standing in the circle when they trigger. I would recommend against using Meteor Shower unless you know you're safe from those prisons, because it really stinks to have to cancel one of those during mid-cast. Also, I'm usually hesitant to use an overload during that time just so that if I do have to dodge, then I don't waste that precious DPS. It is highly likely that your group will have to go for a third glide, But after that third glide, you can choose whether or not you go for the fourth glide or just DPS during the center. So a good time to have that conversation is as you're hopping off the ledge for the third glide so that everyone's coming in for the last part of the fight on the same page. I highly recommend trying to stealth as you're doing that third glide just in case you're a little bit behind and Gorseval does the AoE prisons while you're still gliding in. If you're not stealthed, someone else can very well glide into that prison attack that was meant for you, and they typically get stuck in the air and die horribly. Again, be careful for those prisons as you're doing DPS, focusing on just maintaining a good rotation and maintaining your health, as well as hitting any orbs that spawn too close, as long as you're not making that fourth glide. If you are making that fourth glide, you do have to clear the way instead. Overall, I think Gorseval's a pretty fun fight.